Hi, it's Marcus Hand, editor of Seatrade Maritime News here, and today is our latest episode of Maritime in Minutes on the Seatrade Maritime podcast. Over the next 15 minutes or so, we'll be taking a look back at the top and most interesting stories that have appeared on Seatrade Maritime News in the month of August. We'll be taking events week by week, so sit back, relax, and relive August in maritime and shipping, which proved to be surprisingly busy for a month that is usually known as the silly season. We started out August with our correspondent Nick Sarides taking a look at environmental rankings for both shippers and container lines produced by ShipItZero, a collective of US environmental pressure groups. Ratings were based on the group's three demands: to end port pollution, abandon dirty ships, and put zero at the helm. Interestingly, while conventional wisdom has been that container lines are adopting alternative fuels due to pressure from their customers, it was the shippers who came out worst. Two shippers, Ashley Furniture and Living Spaces, actually scored 0 out of 100. In total, nearly 80% of the shippers surveyed were graded F, while only 40% of the container lines were graded F, although it must be said, neither grouping enjoyed particularly good results. The rankings achieved a rare event, that of uniting shippers and carriers against the rankings. The Global Shippers Forum described the scorecards as arbitrary, with the scales not disclosed, while the World Shipping Council noted carriers were already investing in renewable fuel-capable ships, which it must be said is ahead of the availability of such fuels. ShipItZero said the aim of such scorecards was to sound the alarm and urge companies to take bold action. When it comes to taking action on the environment, Maersk has been at the forefront on the container shipping side of the business, with its investment in methanol-powered tonnage, which it aims to fuel with green methanol. This commitment comes despite higher costs and at the same time sharply declining earnings as the sector comes back to earth after its unprecedented boom during the pandemic. What is particularly worrying in Maersk Q2 results, released during the first week of August though, were the demand numbers for container shipping. In Q2, the demand for containers declined between 4% and 6.5% year-on-year due to weak import growth into North America, Oceania, and Far East Asia, Maersk said. For the year as a whole, it forecast that global container volumes would register a contraction in the range of -4% to -1%, worse than it had previously expected. Somewhat surprisingly, though, in such a scenario, Maersk marginally upped its full-year EBIT forecast to $3.5 to $5 billion. Moving into week 2, and the combination of drought, climate change, and a key waterway linking Asia to the east coast of the Americas, and you have a global news story. The ongoing water issues facing the Panama Canal could have featured in any week of this episode, but the need for the Neo-Panamax vessel Ever Max to unload part of its cargo to transit the waterway pushed concerns to a whole new level. With no quick solutions in sight, the Panama Canal Authority warned it could see up to a $200 million dip in earnings in 2024. Not surprisingly though, there are those out there who see a business opportunity, and one of those is the recently merged Canadian Pacific Kansas City Rail Company. Seatrade Maritime News spoke to Corey Heinz, Managing Director of Sales for CPKC, about how it can offer a rail link from the gateway port of Lázaro Cárdenas in Mexico into the US Gulf and US Midwest markets directly, as well as a Class 1 rail connections to the northeast and southeast destinations in the country. Transit times into Houston and Dallas from Lázaro are just 5 to 6 days respectively, which is extremely good. Corey explains.
We're able to offer this solution where a shipper can avoid maybe having their cargo taken off that vessel or restricted in cargo weight and actually load onto a Asia service coming directly into Lázaro, discharging there and railing up into the Houston, Dallas, Kansas City, Chicago markets.
It remains to be seen how successful this alternative will be. The Panama Canal is prioritizing vessels with transit bookings, and while the number of vessels waiting to transit the waterway is seeing a slowly rising number, the figures from the authorities show that container ships, unlike many other vessel types, have not been impacted by delays. This is because container lines make transit bookings to keep to their fixed schedules. We are keeping an eye on these numbers though, and we will see if the situation changes. The influence of geopolitics on trade and shipping has grown more pronounced in recent years, be it trade wars between the US and China, or the conflict in Ukraine and sanctions against Russia. With this in mind, we have started a new series on the Seatrade Maritime podcast, with well-known Singapore-based executive Punit Oza, founder of Maritime NXT, as a guest presenter. The second week of August saw the airing of the first episode of the series, where Punit talked to Khalid Hashim, Managing Director of dry bulk shipowner Precious Shipping. Khalid has strong views on geopolitics and how this influences shipping and trade, and perhaps a somewhat unexpected take on where the next big geopolitical influence on trade will come from. And I would say actually it's worth listening to the episode just to find this out, as it really surprised me. Anyway, here is what Khalid had to say on the impact of Russian sanctions.
If you look at the numbers, and these are numbers touted by the Ukrainians themselves, they say that Russia's trade has actually increased after the war, despite the weaponization of sanctions against them. So when you have geopolitics affecting trade, you have to actually drill down further to see whether there's really been an impact against trade, or that the trade has still flourished. Because at the end of the day, the world of trade abhors a vacuum. If you create a vacuum, trade will flow in from somewhere else.
To learn more, listen to the full episode on the Seatrade Maritime podcast, and keep an eye out for the second episode in the series in September. If you're enjoying the Seatrade Maritime podcast, make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing on the app of your choice. Moving into week 3, and listeners, we are going to be staying somewhat with geopolitics and trade and its influence in shipping. When it comes to shipping and trade, China's build-up as a ship-owning nation has clearly been strategic in terms of controlling its shipping needs, with state-owned giants such as COSCO Shipping Group. The steady build-up of the country's shipping fleet across a variety of sectors now has seen China dethrone Greece from a 10-year reign as the world's largest ship-owning nation, according to the latest World Fleet Register released by Clarkson's research. As the world's largest cross-trading nation, Greek shipowners overtook Japan in 2013, while China overtook Japan in 2018, according to the Clarkson's analysis. With China's global ship-owning share now lagging behind its share of trade, further growth in its shipping fleet is to be expected. Creating a bit of a stir in the container shipping market in August was the appearance of CStar Line, based out of Dubai, with a slew of services connecting Asia, Middle East, and Russia. As was noted by Khalid Hashim in the podcast on geopolitics, trade abhors a vacuum, and CStar Line is very much filling up a vacuum left by lines that quit serving Russia due to the invasion of Ukraine and sanctions. It was initially unclear if CStar Line was offering its own services or involved in slot share arrangements, but analyst Alphaliner was able to confirm with the company that it chartered 18 vessels from Chinese, Hong Kong, Greek, Turkish, and UAE owners. Heading up CStar Line is CEO Zsolt Katona, a long-time former Maersk executive whose last post was Area Managing Director, Eastern European Area, based in St. Petersburg from 2018 to 2022, according to his LinkedIn profile. Maersk is one of the companies that pulled out of the Russian market. As to who is backing CStar Line, that remains a mystery. Moving into week 4, and listeners, we are staying with container shipping and the sale of a 40% stake in South Korean container line HMM, which has attracted its first potential international buyer in the shape of Hapag-Lloyd. While other major container lines have surely looked at the opportunity, Hapag-Lloyd was the first to be publicly linked to making a bid, having appointed Goldman Sachs as advisors. The German line is reported to have joined 3 local bidders to make it to the second round of bidding. Hapag-Lloyd has a history of expanding through acquisitions, which in the past has included CP Ships and UASC. One analyst Seatrade Maritime News spoke to commented, HMM is for sale. Why wouldn't they look at it? Posting about the story on my LinkedIn page, a number of comments dwelled on the cultural challenges a combination of Hapag-Lloyd and H&M would create, both internally and externally with customers. Whether seller Korean Development Bank would want to let HMM fall into foreign hands also remains under question and causing debate and controversy in Korea. A short list of bidders is scheduled to be announced in November. Check out seatrade-maritime.com for more updates on this story in the coming months. Staying in Asia, Singapore shipowner Pacific Carriers Limited, or PCL, is probably best described as publicity shy. Part of the Kwok Group, a sprawling business empire that includes commodities, properties and hotels, PCL is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. To tie in with this, CEO Ho Weng-yu hosted a small lunch gathering for journalists, lifting the lid on the activities of the Singapore born and bred ship owner. PCL is best known for dry bulk shipping, a business it has been in for all of its 50-year history. And while a number of years back it was noted for its long-term charters of Japanese-owned tonnage, today has moved to being a more asset-heavy ship owner. Around 6 years ago, the company ventured into the product tanker space, and today operates a fleet of 8 MR-sized tankers, which the company sees as a preferred segment. PCL also has 2 new buildings yet to join its product tanker fleet, and could order more in the future. Check out the full story on seatrade-maritime.com, and the link to the story will also be in the show notes. Coming to the 5th week of August, and at the time of recording we've only had a couple of days, so I'll just pick one story for this week. That would be the announcement of the restructuring of the business of Maersk Supply Services. The offshore vessel owner is now privately owned by A.P. Moller Holdings, having been brought out from public-listed A.P. Moller Maersk, which is focusing to become an integrator for container shipping and logistics. Under its private ownership, Maersk Supply Service is moving to focus its business on 2 areas, offshore wind and offshore service vessels, and narrow its geographic focus of business to the Atlantic Basin and the North Sea. As a result of these changes in focus, the company is cutting around 130 jobs, with these layoffs expected to come over the next 18 months. And on that not so cheery note, that is all we have time for on this episode of Maritime in Minutes. To find out more about the stories mentioned in this episode, please see links in the show notes. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to joining you on the next episode of the Seatrade Maritime Podcast.